Honorable Professor Kitila Mkumbo, Minister of State, President's Office, Planning and Investment, who is also a guest of honor this morning. We're totally delighted and honored to have you with us this morning. I would also like to recognize in a very special way the presence of Honorable Dr. Pius Stephen Chaya, Deputy Minister of State, President's Office, Planning and Investment. Honorable guest of honor, allow me to also recognize the presence of Mr. Abduli Rajab Mhinte, Regional Administrative Secretary of the Dar es Salaam region. Honored and delighted to have him with us as well. I would at this juncture like to recognize the presence of all members of diplomatic community present. I would also like to recognize the presence of Dr. Fred Msemwa, the Permanent Secretary, President's Office, Planning and Investment, responsible and looking onto the investment portfolio. I would also like to recognize in our midst the presence of Dr. Blandina Kilama, representing Dr. Tausi Kida, the Permanent Secretary, President's Office, Planning and Investment, but also the Executive Secretary of the National Planning Commission. Delighted to have you with us. Guest of honor, allow me to also recognize the presence of Professor Faustin Kamuzora, the Chairman, National Technical Team, NTT, whom we'll have a privilege to hear from him briefly. But I would also like to recognize the presence of all the representatives of international community, the public sector in a special way, representative of the Treasury Registrar, representative from TISEZA, and all partners present, all invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Guests of honor, this is a validation workshop of the program for improving business environment and investment in Tanzania, popularly known as Mkumbi 2. Mkumbi stands for Mipango wa kuboresha mazingira ya biashara na uwekezaji Tanzania, this being phase 2 towards achieving the Dira 2050 objectives. Guest of honor, allow me without further ado to invite Dr. Fred Msemwa, the Permanent Secretary, President's Office, Planning and Investment, for the welcoming remarks, to be followed by brief remarks from the Dean of the diplomatic community. As he comes, let's put our hands together to welcome him to the podium. Karibu, Dr. Msemwa.
Thank you very much. Honorable Professor Kitila Mkumbo, Minister of State, President Office, Planning and Investment, and our esteemed invited guests, good morning.
Good morning.
I have been assigned to introduce our esteemed guests and to deliver welcoming remarks. In doing so, I would like to introduce distinguished guests and the participants to this high-level validation workshop. I wish to recognize the presence of the following esteemed guests, starting with the Honorable Dr. Pius Stephen Chaya, Member of Parliament, and the Deputy Minister, President Office, Planning and Investment. I recognize the presence of Abdul Mhinte, Regional Administrative Secretary for Dar es Salaam. I recognize the presence of excellencies, ambassadors from different countries present. Please stand up if you... Okay. Thank you, sir. I wish to recognize the presence of Mr. John Olanga, Director of Economic Diplomacy, Excellencies, Head of Missions, present, representatives of international organizations and development partners, present, distinguished business leaders and representatives of the private sector, present. I wish to recognize representatives from ministries, independent departments and agencies present. I recognize the presence of a representative from the National Planning Commission, Dr. Blandina Kilama, representing Permanent Secretary and the Executive Secretary of the National Planning Commission, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Having introduced our esteemed guests, let me now say a few words about this event. Today's gathering marks a significant milestone in the mandate of the President's Office, Planning and Investment. As the Office of the President, responsible for planning and investment, our mission is to foster a conducive business and investment climate in Tanzania by preparing and coordinating the implementation of policies, laws, strategies that guide national development, private sector development, while ensuring both private and private sector investment flourishes. The second blueprint to improve investment and the business environment, which is now abbreviated as Mkumbi 2 in Kiswahili, is one of the critical instruments in attaining these pertinent government goals. Honorable guest of honor, the development of Mkumbi 2 arose from key recommendations arising from joint impact assessment undertaken in the year 2024 by the public and the private sector. The National Technical Team was then established to lead its development. Throughout the process, and as we will note from the report which will be presented in this high-level forum, NTT ensured a broad and inclusive stakeholder engagement. Consultations included public sector institutions, private sector representatives, and the development partners. This approach ensured that Mkumbi reflects diverse perspectives and national priorities. Honorable guest of honor, to ensure comprehensive input, the NTT applied multiple consultations modalities. These include structured face-to-face consultations conducted across various public and private sector institutions, submission of written comments, and the administration of online questionnaires to capture wider stakeholder perspectives. Many participants present today directly contributed to this consultative process and can attest to the extensive efforts undertaken by NTT. Honorable guest of honor, Mkumbi 2 aims at not only addressing new challenges in the business and the investment environment, but also gaps not covered under Mkumbi 1. Today's meeting is an important meeting in validating the draft Mkumbi 2 as reflected from the perspectives of the international community. It allows partners to provide high-level scrutiny of the proposed reforms, focusing on the relevance, the feasibility of the reforms being proposed, the coordination and the monitoring of the same. The process ensures that Mkumbi reflects international best practices while aligning with Tanzania institutions and development priorities. This consultative process also lays the foundation for future technical and financial cooperation during implementation. Honorable guests of honor and distinguished guests, I reaffirm the government commitment to ensuring Mkumbe II serves as a strategic instrument for enhancing competitiveness, expanding private sector investment, creating jobs, and advancing inclusive and sustainable growth. I sincerely thank all embassies, international organizations, and the development partners for your participation in today's event. And looking forward for constructive contributions. And once again, I thank you for your valuable participation and the continued collaboration as we move from validation to implementation. With these few remarks, I thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fred Nsemwa, the Permanent Secretary, President's Office, Planning and Investment, for your introductory as well as the welcoming remark. Guest of honor, before I invite Dr. Ahmad Al-Badwi for his remarks, allow me to formally also mention the countries that are present, that are represented here by the ambassadors or high commissioners. To begin with, we have Spain, United States of America, Germany, Burundi, South Africa, Netherlands, Norway, Vietnam, European Union, and allow me at this juncture to really thank the European Union as well as the NBC Bank for their support towards making this event a great success. Canada, South Korea, Comoro, Uganda, Egypt, France, Ethiopia, China, Indonesia, United Kingdom, Zambia, Japan, Sweden, Slovakia, Denmark, DR Congo, Sierra Leone, Malawi, and Russia. Can you all please put our hands together for the ambassadors present and those representing these countries? Guests of honor, with your permission now, allow me to invite Dr. Hamada Al-Badwi, the ambassador for the Union of Comoros in Tanzania, but also the Dean of the Diplomatic Community, for his brief remarks, to be followed by the remarks on Dira 2050 by Dr. Blandina. As he comes, let's give him and welcome him with a warm round of applause. Karibu Balozi.
South Africa is here.
I mentioned South Africa.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin. Sayyidina wa habibuna wa shafi'una Muhammadun sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. Amma ba'd, Mr. Fortin and the High Table, you give me a difficult job this morning because I didn't prepare a speech, but I come to participate on the launching of the good job. But anyway, I would like to take that opportunity to thank His Excellency Professor Kitila Mkumbo, who is my best friend, Ndio, and for that job, for that work, which in the Quran says, Irja'ul basara marratayn. You have to return back your eyes to see what you are doing the first, to be sure that the second will be successful. It's that we are conveyed today to participate in that workshop to see what we are do from 2018 till now and what we'll plan for the 5 year, like Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, Hafidhahullahu alayha, says on the last speech. So, that work can be successful, that effort can't be successful without a peace in Tanzania. Tanzania is a country which we are living with the peace. We pray God to continue to give peace in the country, to be happy and work closely with us on behalf of ambassadors and high commissioners. I would like again to thank you, his professor, professor, to convey us and participate on that workshop. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, His Excellency and the Dean of Diplomatic Community for your remarks. Distinguished His Excellency, guest of honor, I would like now to invite Dr. Blandina Kilama, who represents the Permanent Secretary Planning and Executive Secretary of National Planning Commission, to give her remarks on Dira 2050. Her remarks will be followed by remarks from the Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Dr. Pius Stephen Chaya, Member of Parliament, is a Deputy Minister of State, President's Office, Planning and Investment. Dr. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Honorable Professor Kitila Mkumbo, the Minister of State, President's Office, Planning and Investment, Minister, the Permanent Secretary, and the Regional Administrative Secretary, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, and then the heads of the representatives of international organizations, esteemed development partners. I think this morning we're going to call you Pakida, to express our sincere appreciation to the excellencies, ambassadors, and representatives of the international community and development partners for their continued partnership in steadfast support of Tanzania development agenda. Your presence today, this morning, is a great reflection of the shared commitment that we have towards strengthening Tanzania investment climate and advancing sustainable economic transformation. Most of you have heard about Dira, and Dira does set out Tanzania's long-term aspiration of becoming a high-income, competitive, inclusive, and innovative-driven economy. It envisions that we're going to have a nation that is industrialized, digitally advanced, and environmentally sustainable, with support coming from strong and accountable institutions. At its core, Dira 2050 aims to improve the quality of life for all Tanzanians through through decent jobs, expanded economic opportunities, and resilient and broad-based growth. While when it comes to implementing the Dira 2050, we do have the long-term perspective plan. Within it, we have a five years development plan, and the fourth five-year development plan does translate this long-term vision into actionable medium-term priorities. In particular, it emphasizes on industrial transformation, export competitiveness, and importantly, expansion of digital economy and climate resilience, without forgetting human capital development and enhanced private sector participation. And that's why all of us are here this morning. It also does recognize that sustainable growth requires sound infrastructure, strong institutions, and effective governance. The second Mkumbi initiative are central to achieving Dira. The Dira is given life by Mkumbi 2, and we're really happy to have you all here this morning, because Mkumbi 2 aims to strengthen the regulatory and business environment by reducing the compliance burdens and enhancing digital governance services. Mkumbi is expected to lower the cost of doing business and boost investors' confidence and support SMEs' growth by modernizing regulations and enabling environment for industrial growth. Honorable guest of honor, under the fourth five-year development plan, the private sector is expected to finance nearly 70% of the total investment, making private capital essential for infrastructure, industrialization, and digital transformation. Mkumbi 2 is a key enabler when it comes to that. A key innovation of Mkumbi 2 is preparing society to embrace the private sector as a development partner. Through the fourth five-year development plan, a result-based monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning framework is seen as the reform milestone whereby we will be able to track performances and publish the results and follow up to make sure all the grievances that we are receiving are being measured and our commitment is demonstrated. As the President's Office, Planning and Investment, we ensure coherence between the vision, the plan, and the Mkumbi 2 initiative. These efforts align sectoral strategies with national priorities and strengthen institutional capacity. They also create a coordinated platform for sustainable reform. Dira 2050 defines our destination. The fourth five-year development plan defines our path. And Mkumbi 2 drives progress towards a competitive, inclusive, and resilient Tanzania. I thank you all for continued support, and I wish you all a successive, constructive engagement. Asanteni sana.
Honorable Minister, having heard about Dira 2050, now I would like to invite Honorable Deputy Minister of State, Dr. Pius Chaya, Member of Parliament, who will give his remarks, and thereafter invite you to speak, to give your speech, Honorable Minister, Guest of Honor. Thank you very much. Dr. Chaya, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Honorable Professor Kitila Mkumbo, the Minister of State, President Office, Planning and Investment, allow me to recognize the presence of the Dean of Diplomatic Community, Mzee wangu, Dr. Fred Msemwa, Permanent Secretary, President Office, Plan and Investment, working on the investment portfolio. But also allow me to recognize the presence of Dr. Brandina Kirama, who is representing the Permanent Secretary, President's Office, Portfolio Planning, and the Executive Secretary for Planning Commission. But also, I should recognize the presence of the Regional Administrative Secretary for Dar es Salaam. Allow me to recognize the presence of excellencies, ambassadors from different countries, but also heads of missions, but also representatives of international organizations and development partners. I recognize the presence of John Ulanga, the Director for Economic Diplomacy, but also Professor Faustin Kamzora, who is the chairman for the National Technical Team that is working for this document. Allow me also to recognize the presence of all ministries, departments, and agencies of the government of the United Republic of Tanzania, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Kazi na utu. Kazi na utu. Honorable Guest of Honor, Professor Kitila Mkumbo. I'm given a very simple task to just invite you to deliver your speech and finally officiate this validation workshop of Blueprint 2 for improving investment and the business environment in Tanzania. However, before I do the task that is ahead of me, kindly allow me to register my appreciation to Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, for her great leadership and the great work that he is doing to our nation. In 2025, Dr. Samia approved the development and the endorsement of the National Vision 2050. To implement the Vision 2050, the President instructed us to develop tools where Blueprint 2 for improving investment and the business environment is one of them. The Vision 2050 is an outcome of her dreams to taking the Tanzania nation to a $1 trillion economy by 2050 and a $7,000 per capita income by 2050, and making the private sector capable to finance this $1 trillion economy by 70% by 2050. Honorable Guest of Honor, allow me also to register my appreciation to you, Honorable Minister Professor Kitila Mkumbo, for your strategic guidance and effective leadership throughout the course of development of this Blueprint 2. You have been instrumental, available, and you have played your role of watching us back as the mentor, the coach, and the builder. So the current stage of this Blueprint 2 is an outcome of your effective leadership. I'm also indebted to register significant acknowledgements to our two permanent secretaries, to mention Dr. Tausi Kida and Dr. Fred Msemwa for their technical guidance, and the national technical team under the chairmanship of Professor Kamuzola for their time, effort, and professionalism. Before I conclude my remark, and on your behalf, Honorable Minister, allow me to recognize the presence of all participants and the sponsors of this workshop. Your names will remain in the history of a nation. Having said so, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to invite the Honorable Minister, Professor Kitila Mkumbo, to deliver his speech and finally officiate this validation workshop. Honorable Minister, karibu sana. Thank you very much.
Naomba tukae. Asante sana. Honorable Dr. Pius Stephen Chaya, the Member of Parliament and the Deputy Minister of State responsible for planning and investment, Your Excellency Dr. Ahmad El Badoui Mohamed Faki, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, but also the Ambassador of the Union of Comoros in the United Republic of Tanzania, Dr. Fred Msemwa, PS Investment, Dr. Blandina Kilama, Deputy Executive Secretary, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, and representatives of development partners, members of the National Technical Team, distinguished business leaders and investors, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude for your overwhelming attendance at this very important session. Your presence demonstrates not only your commitment to the issues before us today, but also your continued partnership with the government of Tanzania in advancing our shared development aspirations. We value this collaboration deeply. Effective 1st July this year, we'll commence the implementation of our 25-year National Development Blueprint, famously known as Dira 2050, our bold vision that seeks to transform Tanzania into a prosperous, just, inclusive, and self-reliant nation. As we all know, prosperity is born of sustained economic growth. And economic growth is driven by innovation. and innovation flourishes under competition, and competition thrives in a conducive business environment. It therefore follows that if we are to deliver the ambitions of Dira 2050, particularly our ambition to becoming a $1 trillion economy by 2050, we must radically improve our business environment. History and evidence show that Africa's development trajectory has been constrained by several structural factors. But chief among these is really the unfriendly business environment, which limits economic freedom and suppresses entrepreneurial dynamism. Overregulation, excessive bureaucracy, inadequate infrastructure, policy unpredictability, and corruption have always stood in the way of unlocking our continent's full potential. The proposed national strategy for improving the investment climate and business environment in Tanzania, which you'll be discussing later today, popularly known as Mkumbi 2, proposes some of the bold and far-reaching reforms to address these constraints. This strategy builds upon the lessons that we have learned from the blueprint for regulatory reforms to improve the business environment, which was known as Mkumbi 1, that has guided reforms over the past 7 years. While Mkumbi 1 achieved notable progress, it also provides valuable lessons. Mkumbi 2, therefore, represents both continuity and correction. Continuity in sustaining reforms that worked, and correction in addressing gaps and implementation challenges that we have identified. The new strategy that we'll be discussing today identified 11 areas of interventions. It also identifies 59 key challenges and proposes 246 reform actions to address those challenges. In a way, this strategy is broader in scope, more systematic in design, and more transformative in ambition than its predecessor. The strategy seeks to not incremental adjustments, but structural changes. In essence, the new strategy is about harnessing our greatest asset, and this is our people, especially our energetic, patriotic, entrepreneurial, and ambitious young population. When this demographic dividend is strategically aligned with our abundant natural resources and the steadfast pro-business leadership of Her Excellency Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, Tanzania stands uniquely positioned for rapid and inclusive transformation. However, this potential will not automatically translate into prosperity. It demands deliberate action, creating a conducive policy, institutional and investment environment that unlocks innovation, stimulates productive enterprise, and channels youthful energy into wealth creation. With the right enabling framework, Mkumbi 2 can become the bridge between our demographic advantage and the structural transformation that we seek to achieve. We can draw clear lessons from countries that were like us only a few years ago and which have undertaken very good transformative journey. Countries like UAE, South Korea, Singapore, and even in Africa, our friends in Mauritius. These nations have limited natural resources compared to us, yet their levels of prosperity are remarkable. Their distinguishing factor has been a predictable, competitive, and investor-friendly business environment. Mkumbi 2 seeks to place Tanzania firmly on that path towards a world-class investment climate that supports private sector growth, attracts quality investment, promotes innovation, and generates decent jobs for our people. Today's workshop, therefore, is not a procedural exercise. It is a strategic moment. We want your candid views. We want constructive criticism. We want practical suggestions. Our aim is to ensure that the final strategy reflects not only government intentions, but also the lived realities of investors and development partners. Dira 2050 requires us to transition from seeing the private sector as stakeholders who are there to provide opinion and comments to partners that are going to jointly work with us to address problems. So it's not like we come to a room where one side has all the questions and the other side has all the answers. We think that both the government and the private sector have questions and have answers. We jointly sit together to address problems, jointly create solutions to our problems. So it is no longer the question of stakeholders. We want to treat and handle the private sector as partners in development, because that is very essential. Therefore, let us be bold in our discussions. Let us be honest in our reflections. And let us be united in our commitment to building a business environment that matches the ambitions of Dira 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that we need to go into discussions. And with these remarks, let me declare that this validation workshop is officially opened. I thank you for your attention. God bless Africa, God bless Tanzania, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Waziri wetu, Honorable Professor Kitila Mkumbo, for officiating this gathering. We will have the privilege to have your closing remarks later after the end of the discussion. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, allow me also, Honorable Guest of Honor, to recognize that amongst us is a representative from the Embassy of Italy, but we also have the Second Secretary from Qatar with us in this congregation. Guest of Honor, as we now go on to the presentation of the Mkumbi 2 draft report, which has convened all of us here, allow me to also take a moment to recognize the members of the National Technical Team that are behind Mkumbi 2. May I request all of us, all the members of National Technical Team, to please rise so we can recognize all the effort you've put towards coming up with this report. Can you all recognize them with a round of applause? Asante sana, kindly take your seats. Guest of Honor, allow me now to invite the Chairman of the National Technical Committee, Professor Faustin Kamuzora, for his presentation, which will then be followed by a discussion. As he comes, let's welcome him with a round of applause. Karibu sana, Professor.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Permanent Secretary, all honorable invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the National Technical Team, which you formed almost a year ago, and you have provided unmeasurable guidance, we thank you so much for trusting us to undertake a task of drafting Mkumbi 2. In the process, we met various stakeholders, including the group present today. We are happy to come back and present results of the process. May you kindly allow me to invite Dr.
Maliti, who is going to take us through the presentation. It's short, and thereafter, would ask the participants under your guidance to discuss and provide all other inputs as you have put it. And we promise all good, important comments and inputs will still be taken into consideration as we finalize the drafting of this Mkumbi 2. So, Dr. Maliti, take us through, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. And after the presentation, would kindly, if you don't mind, guide us through the discussion. Dr. Maliti, please.
Thank you, Professor Kamzora, Chairman of the NTT team, Honorable Minister, Professor Kitila Mkumbo, Honorable Deputy Minister, Dr. Pius Chaya, Permanent Secretaries, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, all protocol observed. So I'm going to make a very short presentation on the reform actions that we have been proposing in the document that we have submitted to the ministry for consideration. So my presentation is going to cover four areas. The first part I'm going to highlight, I'm going to highlight the extent of consultation that we did in terms of the scope, the number of people that we interviewed, the number of institutions that we had interfaced when we were collecting views to be included in the reform program. And then I will present the list of clusters, how we have clustered those reform actions, and under each cluster, I'm going to highlight some selected reform actions. We are not going to present the entire list of the reform actions, but only selected ones. And then I will summarize the key issues that I'm going to present from the first slide to the last slide. In terms of the scope of the consultation, we interacted with a total of 2,034 individuals coming from both the private sector and the government side in terms of entities. We also uploaded an online questionnaire, and the responses we got from a total of 5,453 individuals responded to the questionnaire. In terms of the entities, the 2,034 individuals were coming from 248 government institutions. We are talking about local government authorities. We are talking about central government authorities in terms of ministries, in terms of regulatory bodies. And also we managed to meet a total of 465 entities from the private sector. Here we are talking about private sector associations. We are talking about individual companies, which are all included in the number that I'm presenting right now. So this is the scope of the consultation that we did, which led to what the Honorable Minister said, a total of more than 240 reform actions that are currently being proposed. So basically, validation is also part of data collection. So we expect that when we are conducting the validation of the reform actions that we are proposing, the number of people you are seeing right now will go up, because some of the people who will attend the validation, some of them did not have a chance to attend the initial stage of data collection. So your views are going to be taken up, and they will be considered in the course of finalizing the process. So basically, we we have a total of 11 thematic areas, which I'm going to cluster them around 6 clusters of reform actions. The first cluster, we are talking about cutting red tapes. Basically here, we are talking about reform actions that are going to simplify, streamline regulations and administrative procedure that impose unnecessary burden to the private companies. The second cluster of reforms, it's all about smart government. Here we are focusing on digitalization of government services and build up one-stop digital platforms across different government institutions. The third cluster of reforms are referring to the issue of smart finances. Basically, we are talking about having a mix of financial instruments together with a better financial system that will enable private companies to have better access or easy access to financial services. The fourth cluster of reforms focuses on the hard side. We are talking about the infrastructure that have the potential to unlock the energy of the private sector to contribute to the growth ambition that the country has indicated in the Vision 2050. So basically, if you look at the other reforms, are mostly focusing on the soft side. The fourth cluster of reforms are focusing on the hard side. The fifth part of the reform cluster is basically about institutional and regulatory aspects that are focusing on simplifying solutions to commercial disputes. And then the last cluster of reforms are focusing on enhancing coordination, coherence, and also synergies between different roles that government entities have when it comes to interacting with the private sector. So basically, most of these clusters accommodate the reform actions that were listed in the handout note that was distributed to members, to you, invited people, a day before yesterday. So if you look at the fourth cluster, this is basically the additionality from Mkumbi 1. Mkumbi 1 was mostly focusing on the soft side, so we added value, not only in terms of new reform agenda or new reform actions, but cluster 4 is reappearing different from what was included in Mkumbi 1. So in terms of value addition, we have infrastructure now in Mkumbi 2, in addition to many, many reforms that have emerged due to changing dynamic, both in the private sector and also in the public sector. So in terms of the first cluster of the reform agenda that we are proposing, the first subgroup, we are focusing on reducing or simplifying the interaction between the regulatory bodies and the private companies in terms of coordinating the inspections that the regulatory bodies are conducting when they are visiting the private sector. So we are also proposing reforms that will allow the regulatory bodies to conduct their inspections based on the risk analysis. So not everyone would be inspected, but when they are doing the ranking of the risks, that the most risk entities should be visited relative to the lowest ranked entity. The second group, we are talking about stabilizing fees and bylaws. So fees that the regulatory bodies are charging the private entities should be proportional to the size of the businesses. So the small businesses should not encounter similar size of the fees relative to the large private operators. The third side or domain under Cluster 1, we are proposing the introduction of the Business Facilitation Act, which will allow the government to screen all the new laws, regulations, and fees before they are finalized based on their impact, potential impact on business environment and investment climate. But we are also proposing that within that Business Facilitation Act, it should be mandatory for every new new law that have an impact on business environment to undergo regulatory impact assessment, as well as to make mandatory public consultation before such instruments are finalized. We are also proposing a simplification of business licensing in terms of reducing the high cost of business entry, in terms of having systems that serve both purposes of business registration and also at the same time serve the same purpose of business licensing. So the private company should interface with a single platform that will allow that particular entity to both register and at the same time to obtain required sectorial licenses. So this is the first group of selected reforms that we are proposing under Cluster 1. Under Cluster 2, which is entirely about digitalization, we are proposing the establishment of one-stop digital entry point that would, the private sector would interface when it comes to their ability to comply with different regulatory obligations. So the issue is to consolidate the current multiple electronic platform, into a single or limited number of platforms that talk to each other. So here we are focusing mostly about the concept of interoperability, that even if you have multiple electronic platforms, they should be able to work together. So if I'm a private sector, I'm submitting a document to one platform, that document should be accessible to other platforms as well. The second side, we are talking about upgrading the capacity of the fiber optic backbone so that it goes beyond the current situation where it's focusing on major towns so that it reaches all the wards in Tanzania, but also the capacity of that fiber optic backbone. I think from the current state of 2 terabytes per second to the capacity of 10 terabytes per second. So once that capacity goes up, it will increase the data carrying capacity of the cable we are talking about, so that that cable is allowed to handle as much traffic as possible at once and to increase the speed and the network stability. We also are proposing several initiatives that will mandate the design of the current e-platform and the new ones to be customer-oriented. So we are talking about having systems that allow not only about submitting a document, but to allow two-way communication. The platform should also be characterized by multiple language, should be in Swahili, should also be in English to allow further inclusion of small and medium enterprises, as well as to have systems that allow automated notifications. So we should have systems that will send reminders about when the fees are supposed to be paid. They should be able to send reminders about the new license that needs to be applied and other compliance regulatory requirements. Also, we have proposed reforms that will increase the confidence of the private sector when they are interacting with electronic platforms in terms of data protection, in terms of enhancing cybersecurity of the systems, as well as having a robust digital ID system that is secured and give confidence to the private sector to interact with electronic platforms. In terms of smart finances, as I said at the beginning, here we are talking about two components. To have a better financial system that will facilitate the establishment of the right mix of financial instruments. So we are proposing the introduction of innovative financial instruments for small and medium enterprises. For instance, at the moment, the dominant source of lending is fixed collateral in terms of buildings and also in terms of land. So we are proposing a regulatory framework that would allow movable assets, invoices, and contracts to be used as collateral when it comes to access to lending facilities from financial institutions. We are also proposing expanding the amount of information that credit scoring system used to make an analysis of risks when one is applying for loans. At the moment, the most dominant source of information is lending data from commercial banks. So we are proposing a system that risk analysts, when they are using credit scoring system, they should have access to additional information in terms of mobile money transaction, in terms of utility, using information from the utility payment, before they come to the conclusion if somebody is high risk or low risk when it comes to assessing the different loan applications from either large businesses or small businesses. We are also proposing mechanisms that will facilitate development banks to collaborate with private capital and expand the availability of blended financing. So we are proposing that development banks at the moment should be able either to take the first loan, to do partial guarantees, to subsidize technical assistance in those projects that they will be co-financing with private capital. We are also proposing mechanisms that would create regulatory frameworks that would allow piloting, and I'm focusing here, piloting of new innovative financial products. I'm presenting two basic examples, cash flow-based lending. This particular product, lenders will use information on the inflow and outflow of cash in order to assess if somebody can be eligible for loans. Factoring, we are recommending a system that should allow piloting of factoring, that a company can use invoices, can take an invoice to a lender instead of waiting for 30, 60, 90 days before receiving money from the recipient of the supplier. So the lender will receive the invoice, will give the money directly to the private company, and then once the payment is made, that money goes directly to the lender to offset the loan balances. In terms of infrastructure, the first part we are recommending that the focus at the moment should also be to facilitate, to complete the road connectivity from the production side to the port, to the outlets that will enhance farmers, small businesses, and also large business to access market. So we are talking about connection from farming, from production zones to the main road, to the ports, and then to the outside market or within domestic market by enhancing and prioritizing feeder roads, the smaller connecting infrastructure within the same domestic market. In terms of industrial power supply, the first aspect we are recommending is first to identify the priority production corridors, and once those corridors are identified, then to prioritize investment in terms of stabilizing power supply to such areas, as well as investing in fast maintenance response to those particular priority production corridors. We are also recommending that, we are also proposing some reforms that will broaden sources of infrastructure financing. At the moment, the most dominant source is central government budget, local government budget. So we are proposing reforms that will unlock the possibility of city councils, for instance, to issue bonds, pooled resources, ring-fencing revenue for particular projects that has been financed by loans, and also to enhance the regulatory environment within this famous product of public-private. We are also proposing reforms to enhance the coordination of infrastructure planning across different ministries, departments, and agencies, so that the country is able to align roads, railway, ports, utility investments within the prioritized industrial areas, as well as to align with the spatial planning across the country. The fifth cluster of reforms basically can be available for future investment, and which land is being used for what purposes. We are also proposing the fast tracking of the introduction of the intellectual property right, and we believe that we believe that once that policy is in place, it will unlock the introduction of several initiatives. The first one is the introduction of the new intellectual property right. The policy should also give energy to the introduction of the integrated registration platform for IPR. That registration platform for IPR exists at the moment, but it's not integrated. So you have one side of COSOTA, you have another side BRELA, and what we are proposing is having an integrated system that would allow and reduce transaction costs when it comes to registering intellectual properties. We are also proposing the strengthening of the alternative dispute resolution system. We are talking about mediation arbitration system in terms of enforcing the decisions that the arbitration systems are taking. So once the decision is taken up, we are proposing mechanism to enforce those awards that are given during the arbitration. We are also proposing enforcement of the timeline, reasonable timelines, that those awards should be enforced. But we are also proposing the review of the alternative dispute resolution to align with the best practices. UNICITRO stands for United Nations Commission for International Trade Law. They've produced best practices which are well regarded globally, and they can be used to benchmark the reforms process to upgrade our alternative dispute resolution system. The last part, we are talking about enhancing coherence, coordination, and synergy between different roles of government entities. The first part, we are proposing the mandating of KPIs, key performance indicators for business facilitation across the government system. We are talking about local government, we are talking about central government, we are talking about agencies. That they should have KPIs which not only track their support to business facilitation, but also measure and report their performance when it comes to business facilitation and improvement in the business environment. We are also proposing strengthening coordination across different government entities in terms of giving legal backing to the joint or interagency coordination mechanisms such as joint task forces which cut across different government entities. We are also proposing that regulatory bodies' performance should not be measured as quality infrastructure, basically, and land. We are also talking about reform actions that cover the end side of the business in terms of dispute resolution, contract enforcement, etc. In the proposal document, we also provided the ranking of the reform actions. They are not the same, so we have highlighted which ones will be the top, which ones will be the medium, which ones will have low priorities. Now, in terms of the implementation principle, we believe that implementation of the reform actions that we proposed will or should be embedded within the existing institution. If there is a reform action that is relevant to TISEZA, for instance, it is TISEZA through its own national system of annual budgeting should be responsible to implement that particular reform. So basically, we are not proposing an establishment of a new bureaucracy, a new agency. All the reform actions fit within the mandate, the legal mandates that different government entities have been provided. Basically, our focus was on the whole of the government. If you look at the proposed reform actions, they cover central government, local government, and also agency-level reforms. So business, at the end of the day, business should be able to see or to interface with the government as one, as single, predictable partner wherever they are interacting with BRELA, TRI, NIDA, or any other entities that, that have something to do with the private sector. Lastly, we should acknowledge that Kumbi 2 is not the only process. There are many other processes that are going to implement some reforms, and some of those reforms are expected to have positive impact on the business environment and also on the investment climate. If I remember correctly, Honorable Minister presented LTTP and a 5-year development plan 4 to the Parliament on the 2nd of February. And those processes also include a number of reforms that are of relevant to the business environment and investment climate. Asanteni.
Can we give another round of applause for the work well done? Now, thank you so much for your presentation. Now, in front of you is a notebook or a notepad and a pen. For those of us who wish to contribute, kindly just write your name on that piece of paper, tear it, lift it up, I'll come collect it and present it to the guest of honor. He will read out the names loud, and then you'll be allowed to contribute. Kindly let us see how best that can work. But for the time being, be advised that in front of you on that piece of, on that notepad, write your name that you would like to contribute, and the chairman, who is the guest of honor, will now accord us with the room to contribute onto the presentation that has just been made. Without further ado, I'll now pass the mic on to the guest of honor to lead us onto the discussion. Mheshimiwa Waziri, karibu sana.
So good morning once again. Now we go to the most important session, which is really your comments. So instead of, you can do this, but if you can also write your name, and then I will be reading out your name here to contribute. But to begin with, let us agree on the basic rules. How many minutes should we spend per commentator? 3, 5 minutes? How many are saying 3? How many are saying 5? 2? Should we spend 2 minutes? How many? 3 or 5? 2, 3 or 5? 3 minutes. Can we agree 3 minutes per participant, right? Okay. So as you think, let us begin with these two. Just write your name, and then I will be reading you out. I'm using the system we use in the Parliament. This is how we do it. We don't raise a hand. You just write your name to the speaker, and then you'll be called out. You'll be called to speak. So I'll begin with Mwamina Ngwale, the First Secretary of Trade from Zambia High Commission. Karibu sana.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and all protocols observed. I'm Mwamina Ngwale from Zambia High Commission, First Secretary Trade, and I've got 2 submissions to make within my 3 minutes. I think the first one is where we have a challenge, which is natural, as Tanzania is growing its business. Okay, sure. As Tanzania is growing its business environment, I think we have a natural response from the private sector, particularly the clearing and forwarding agents and ICDs in the clearing of, in the customs clearance for the transit cargo, where they engage in, they are natural, and this is not particular to Tanzania, but any country, including my country, Zambia, where I come from. If the business is growing, the business environment, the private sector are naturally tilted towards engaging in profit maximization of behavior, which sometimes comes with impunity because you have these players taking advantage of the foreign counterparts, consignees and the like, who cannot easily seek redress within the territory. So Zambia's submission is under reform number 4. I think from the presentation that we're getting, it's cluster number 5, but particularly in our online documents, it's reform number 4 and number 8, where we are proposing that one of the things that Tanzania should do is set up an online mechanism to address the vice where the private sector may want to take advantage of those players that are coming from outside, because it's quite difficult for outside players to seek redress within Tanzania. It's costly and also it's quite inconveniencing. So our proposal, I think, as Zambia, is that we should have an online mechanism where these issues can be redressed so that we continue growing the trade environment for Tanzania. I think in line with the same submission, we also want to explore a reform where the private sector from Tanzania and Zambia may be mandated to submit a contract as they are doing their customs clearance, because that provides a serene business environment. But also quickly, within my 3 minutes, I think under cluster number 1, we would want to propose that instead of having regulatory fees based on the size or proportion, maybe Tanzania looks at achieving what it wants to achieve through taxes, because generally regulatory fees are supposed to be commensurate to the service that is being provided. I think that will align with under cluster number 6, align with the goal where we want to have reduce revenue target pressure on regulators. I think those can be they can be considered side by side. So we have on one hand under cluster number 1, where we want to have regulatory fees based in business size, but we also want under cluster number 6 to reduce revenue pressure on regulators. I thought I should make those 2 submissions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our colleagues in the National Technical Team, they're taking note and they will be able to make comments at a later stage. Can I call Jonathan Howard from the U.S. Embassy?
Thank you, Honorable Professor Mkumbo and the team that's worked on this report. We really appreciated the opportunity to meet with you all and provide input in the development of the report, and now to hear some of the conclusions. I think the entire diplomatic corps is united in supporting this work to improve the business and investment environment as we all work towards development and acceleration of economic growth in Tanzania. Just a couple quick comments and reflections. First of all, just with respect to validation, I think all of us have received these sort of top-line recommendations, which are very interesting. We noted the identification of like 59 areas of challenges and 246 reforms. I think in terms of true validation, it would be very helpful for us to see the full breadth of the recommendations and have an opportunity to comment and provide input so that we can play a role in that process. Secondly, I think it's going to be really important for the implementation of Mkumbi 2 to look at what were the recommendations and what is the status of implementation out of Mkumbi 1 and other reform efforts. We took note and also participated in the President's Tax Reform Commission. That was launched, I think, 18 months ago with a 6-month mandate. We're still very much looking forward to hearing the recommendations and the way forward from that commission. I think just overall, we would say the progress over the last year in terms of the business and investment environment has not necessarily been a positive one. I think there are some policies that were announced in the run-up to the election that have, clear political goals, but were not necessarily helpful for international investors and advancing the business environment. Those include things like local currency regulations, local content requirements, all of which sound really good for domestic interests, but don't actually advance private sector-led economic growth. We continue to be very concerned about TRA tax practices. I know that's something that the Tax Reform Commission will hopefully address, but it remains a significant obstacle to growth in Tanzania. Just to conclude with a few questions, I think the electronic platform that's proposed, it would be interesting to know, will that include all regulatory and tax authorities, or will there be still different silos, as it were? So will TRA be included? And yes, just to conclude with the point I made earlier, these goals, I think, are really helpful to hear. They sound great. The key question is going to be how you plan to implement and what the path is forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Next is Mr. Yusuf Seisha from Sierra Leone.
If you can please rise so we bring you the mic.
Yeah. You want to speak from there? Yeah, go ahead, no problem.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning again, Professor Kitila and the iTable, and good morning to everyone here. My only concern here that I want to add value to everything that we said here this morning is on the red tape. How can we address the red tape wherein we can have a one-stop center? Let's say I'm an investor, I'm coming all the way from Sierra Leone, I want to invest into Tanzania. Should I come to the TIC, the Tanzania National Investment Center, or should I go as a local investor to BRELA, wherein I may need to register my business, and just from that one-stop center wherein it is TIC or BRELA, I can just do all my registration, all the process, including all necessary required documents that I may need to get. I don't need to move from this office. Let's say I am going to do my registration at BRELA, I'm going to TRA, I'm going to get my license to the local municipal. I need to get all my necessary documents at a one-stop center. If it is I'm going to TIC, I get my document from TIC. TIC will give me the guideline through BRELA. They will give me my guidelines through all other institutions, let's say license department, and all other institutions. I just need to do it within maybe 5 minutes, 30 minutes, I'm done. That can enhance the business development into the country, because the human capital in Tanzania has already been developed. The infrastructure is already there. What are we waiting for? Let's move on to do the registration process. Let us encourage the investment to come into the country to develop the economy, increase the employment, and increase all sorts of income that you may need. We have all other development in the country. We have natural resources, we have the human capital, we have the infrastructure. Let us address the red tape. That is my only contribution here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A very useful one. Now, I know there are people who are very kind to environment. They cannot write papers because they love the environment very much. If you can raise your hand if you still want to speak. You could not write a piece of paper because you are so environmentally conscious. Mikono, kama ipo. Okay, so maybe we take those three and we ask Professor Kamzora, do you want to address some of the issues that emerged from the three comments?
Thank you so much for the good comments. As we said previously, still we are collecting some of the comments, some of the information. We might not have all the answers right now, but basically we are thankful to all these three comments which came. Our colleague and friend from Zambia, I think we take seriously on what you said. Our economies are interlinked, so once we do well, we wish you to do well. And particularly, we are so much concerned, like the inefficiency at the border. So we need to, and again, seriously continue working with you, so that once the the goods leave the port, they can I'm sure on working with you so that at the end of the day, our transporters, our business people, in fact, our people can easily be efficient, make more money, and once they make more money, everybody benefits. Our friend from the US, again, thank you so much. We met you during our consultation, and some of the issues, of course, we raised during the consultation, we put them forward to respective responsible institutions that are being addressed. And I'm 100% sure with this kind of consultations, some of these things, because the spirit, particularly the spirit, if we can start with the minister, our honorable minister, it pains him if there's anything which is hindering the business process, and at the end of the day, because he's responsible for the implementation of the Vision 2050, anything which is putting a brake on the implementation of that vision actually is not in his, he's going to do whatever in his power to make sure everything is done. But in our reform agenda, one of the things we are coming up with, we would like to advise, and I'm sure this advice is going to be taken seriously, that whatever act, whatever regulation which is put in place in the economy, a serious impact assessment should be done before, not after, when it is implemented. And again, we know the experiences of some of the countries where the e-platforms have been implemented and they have cut a lot of red tape. So, and for sure, at least in this country, we know what works by now. And I think the spirit of implementing the best are there. And luckily, thanks to the quick development of the rapid development in ICT, I think much of the efforts are going to be put in place. And luckily, and again, there are so many examples, like we discussed the other day, whereby we see if you put in place effective e-platform tools, you save a lot of time, you can do a lot in a day, and this is the effort which is being proposed in this document, and I'm sure the implementation is going to be so. Again, our friend from Sierra Leone, surely this is the spirit that breaking the silos between the government departments, government institutions, you as an investor, you as a business person, you have only 24 hours just like anybody else. So you should not be put in a position where investing your capital, investing your time should be taxed by some of these unnecessary red tapes. And I can assure you that at least this document is very clear about it. The execution, the executors, those who are in power to execute, I'm sure that in that now they can promise that what you have proposed is going to be implemented. and we acknowledge that, as you put it, our countries, Tanzania and Sierra Leone and others, we have very efficient and effective human resource, and the other natural endowment. So what is needed is strong institutions, and these are at least having this one document which is taking the entire customer journey, the entire investment or business journey. I think this is kind of a new, maybe a new undertaking, a new revolution, whereby from the entry of the business up to the resolution or the closure of the business, if somebody wants, this document takes care of the entire process, and I think things will get better. I have some comments here. I don't know it's from which one, but otherwise it is the same. The red tape, the implementation strategy. The implementation strategy definitely, after we have collated, put all the ideas together, we have started to come up with an implementation strategy. Definitely, that is one of the other components which is being worked on. And again, the clearance, the online. This comment is on issues on importance of online processes. I'm sure we have taken care of it. And the regulatory fees, again, the document is very clear that it's important regulators to collect some revenues to run their businesses, but not necessary to collect as much they can, because at the end of the day, we are proposing that even some of the fees should be kept, not necessarily go to proportion just as a percentage, but if it is just enough to cover the running of the regulator, should not collect, because at the end of the day, these are not tax collecting agents. But actually, when it comes to the smart regulation as we are proposing it, it's very clear how smart regulations work, and I'm sure this is going to be implemented without any problem. So, Honorable Minister, my colleagues, we have a strong team, very competent team. If there is anything somebody wanted to add out of these 4 questions, maybe somebody can come and compliment, but we are taking note that the process is going on. The comments we are getting today will still be part of the final product. But my colleagues, if there is anybody wanted to add something, maybe Professor Majambo on the finalization of the business part, if any. If none, then probably, Honorable Minister, maybe you can guide us.
No, unless there are further comments, MC Kamakuna, I'm not sure, I have not received any further. Okay. Yeah, of course. Let me just add a few comments. Number one, I think the colleague from Zambia raised a very important question. We still have those unnecessary non-trade barriers, which is limiting intra-Africa trade, really. Africa is still trading more with Europe than we are trading among ourselves, which is a part of the big problem that we have. We really have to facilitate intra-Africa trade if we are to grow our economies and achieve prosperity. And that requires taking comparative advantages of our countries rather than competing among ourselves. It is very disturbing when we go to these big meetings, you find the superpowers speaking together. Europe as Europe, and still Africa, we speak as single entities. Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Zambia. You know, if our friends who are really very big, very strong, they are uniting. When it comes to important issues like trade, we can't afford Africa to continue moving as, national entities. We have collaborated politically for so long. We have very strong political collaboration in Africa, but very small trade collaboration, which is, trade is more important. Politics is for us leaders, really, but if you want to liberate our people, for them to achieve economic freedom, it is intra-Africa trade, and we now have the framework. So I think your question was even bigger than the question itself. It is so fundamental that we have to have that conversation, especially in the context of the current geopolitics and the geoeconomics. Africa has to come together. We have no option. And coming together to do business, to do investment jointly. And we have to begin talking about our comparative advantage. I think this is so important where we are. And Zambia and Tanzania, we were the pioneers of a very important Pan-African infrastructure project through the Tazara. We are revitalizing it now. And of course, our border at the Tunduma, we need to do something there. It is so important for our people, and that is what is going to grow our economy. And of course, I think Professor addressed the question of Jonathan. I'm not sure if Jonathan is happy with you, but otherwise you are right. The issues you raised, including our tax reform recommendation from the Tax Reform Commission, will go a long way. And the team did meet their colleagues in the Tax Reform Commission, and a lot of reform actions. They have also taken note of the recommendation that were given by the Tax Reform Commission. So that one is important. We take note of your comment on the previous election. Yusuf, yeah, I think this issue of red tape is important to be addressed, and the report includes very interesting reform actions regarding how do we deal with the overwhelming bureaucracy. Africa loves bureaucracy, Even the way that this table is set is very bureaucratic, and you could see. So in Africa, bureaucracy is still a problem. Even where it is not necessary, we introduce bureaucracy. Even the way our meetings are set, they're very bureaucratic. Kitila speaks this one, before I got to speak, I had to be welcomed by the deputy minister. What is that now? So that is so there is a lot of overwhelming bureaucracy in Africa that we have really to address. It is a problem, especially when it comes to doing business, because things have to be fast. So over bureaucracy is a problem, and I think the report tries to address it. There is the question of the overregulation, introducing a lot of fees on the way. I think Jonathan also raised that one. So the report also has a lot of recommendation on how to deal with overregulation. But you also have a very clear guidance from Her Excellency President that we have to reduce. I think our businesses are overregulated. We just have too many regulatory authorities. I've just come from a visit in Morogoro. I was, visiting some of the fantastic sugar factories. They are doing very well, international standard. And then somebody comes from regulatory authority by the name of so-and-so, they're going to inspect them. These guys are already way ahead of the national standards. They're really there, meeting very, very serious international standards. But we still send our very small regulatory authorities to really disturb our businesses, and we shall be dealing with these ones going forward. We have to reduce them. We are going to remain with few, and this is a guidance that we have from my Excellency the President to ensure that we remain with only necessary. Obviously, businesses have to be regulated, but we have to have a healthy balance between, markets and state regulation. We have to have a healthy balance, so that we don't overregulate our business, because this is a problem in our situation. So that will be addressed. I think, at least theoretically, at the TISEZA, we have a one-stop facilitation center where we have about 14 government institutions, including BRELA for that matter, where ideally you should be able to register your company online and finalize a lot of processes, almost 90% within that place. The problem we have is that we have not fully implemented, because some institutions are sending very junior staff, and we have asked them to send people with final decisions so that, you know, if it is TRA, they should be able to resolve all the issues to the finality. But at least we have that one, and we are going to be strengthening it through the implementation of this one. So lastly, because we don't have comments, so Maliki, I see you on the program. You're supposed to be giving a summary. Do you have a, what do you want to summarize, my friend? Do you want to summarize in 1 minute? Okay, we still have, okay. So finally we have hands. Please, can we have the mic going to that table? Karibu sana.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Dorota Pańczyk from the European Union here. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here to discuss the proposed reforms. Indeed, we have met a few months ago when we received the invitation for consultation. We held meetings, so it's really appreciated. And as was already mentioned by some of the colleagues, we are really looking forward to see more detailed documents with more reforms so we can exchange further. I think it's extremely important to get best our interests and what can be done. We can all go value added to really advance the best reforms, to advance the vision and our joint interest. As you know, European Union here, with Team Europe, we are implementing Global Gateway Strategy. We are pushing for European investment, and our value addition here in terms of our partnership is also to strengthen the local productive tissue, so the local SMEs, local production, and I think that's how our partnership works together. That's how we can advance. So as you understand, this all is very important for us. We are really happy, you know, European Union have been supporting the implementation of the Mkumbi 1, the work on this, so we are really happy to be here. And maybe on some concrete comments, I think the first part, so the first reform cluster, cutting red tape, it's extremely important. I think we have exchange with our European businesses present here and those also that would like to strengthen business links and investment links. And I think the predictable and transparent regulatory environment is really key. So I think the advance notice and stakeholders consultation, which was also mentioned, I think it's extremely important. And the stability in the tax legislation is also key. I think we have heard earlier, we also heard from our companies that from one day or another they can receive a notice of payments of additional tax laws that was introduced. So this is definitely not encouraging to strengthen investment, and some of the companies may also leave despite investing also heavily in the country. This brings me also to the second point, which is aftercare of investment. I'm not sure it was mentioned in the presentation that we saw. We discussed this during our consultation in September. I think companies, the most important partners, they might have, for example, the account managers that follow with them, that there is also an easy communication flow, so they know whom to talk to, whom to discuss if these new laws are introduced. So this would be the aftercare and the investor facilitation. And then maybe last but not least, the regulatory, the impact assessment that you mentioned. In the presentation, it refers to the new laws, but maybe it might be interesting and beneficial to look at the existing laws to discuss with private sector what could be modified, facilitated. And then in terms of access to finance, there was the whole presentation on the banking sector, but we have been working also with Tanzania on the venture capital. I think it strengthens also access to finance and looks at more innovative approaches. And then also maybe a question on the sector approach. As you know, European Union, we focus on a few sectors. We focus on digital, critical minerals, agriculture, also transport and energy. So some of our comments and the exchanges initially we proposed on specific sectors to have really attract investment in those specific sectors. So we are wondering if this is going to be also reflected in the document. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Did I see another hand in the same table? No? There was, no, okay. So I think you addressed a very important question, and I would like my colleagues from the national technical team to really comment on some of those. Professor, do you want to come in, or one of you are? Who? You? Maybe you can begin, and then you can, yeah, I think she raised very important issues there, especially if they are in the, obviously,
Can I?
obviously we will have to avail this document to you so that we receive more comments afterward. So, Professor Majamba.
Thank you. The questions that have been raised so far are contained in, they are addressed to a large extent in the main document. So as the Honorable Minister has pointed out, if that is made available to you, you may have more other impact, more important, or rather be more focused. But in terms of the aftercare, that has been taken on board. In terms of, we're also talking about change of mindsets. We engaged, Dr. Maliti discussed the KPIs. That's also another area it's relatively new. And to make you guys comfortable, I see Howard again. Howard, in the last meeting we met, Jonathan, we had engaged very deeply in terms of post-Mkumbi 1. So we had Mkumbi 1. After an assessment that was made on Mkumbi 1, that is what led to Mkumbi 2. So there was a lot of progress in terms of implementation of Mkumbi 1. The lessons learned from Mkumbi 1 will also be improved to see the extent to which we could also work on the recommendation being made in Mkumbi 2. So we rest assured that all is well. Thank you.
Asante sana.
There's another contribution. Prof. Mwenyekiti.
A small clarification just before my chair, Professor Kamzora, takes the podium. Questions have been, I think a comment has been made on issues about access to finance for the SMEs, and that's a big issue we found. Many attempts have been made in the past. So this time we tried to think of how can we expedite this. We know efforts had already started for establishing an ecosystem for venture capital financing in Tanzania. The capital markets, working with the Ministry of Finance and other experts, have been working on that. What we are looking at is how can we expedite that process. I understand even before Mkumbi 2 is adopted, draft legislations have been made, but as we know, it's not just the legal framework that works with venture capitalism. You need the institution, you need capacity building, you need capacity on both the financiers and those to be financed, the SMEs looking for finance. This is a process that has actually already started. It's happening as we speak. And all Mkumbi 2 will be looking at is how can we expedite that process so that we can get the results as early as possible and get it contributing into the growth of the private sector. I just wanted to make this small clarification, sir.
Again, thank you, our sister from the European Union. When we met, we had a very good meeting, and some of these issues were raised, and as my colleagues have said, a number of them actually appearing in the document. But the best part of this Mkumbi 2, it is coinciding with the implementation of the Dira, of the Vision 2050. And by now, you can see the alignment. And I think most of these things are going to easily be taking place. Like a proposal that not only new laws or new regulations should go through the impact assessment or the regulatory impact assessment. I believe ministries have been required to review their policies so that they can align with the implementation of the Vision 2050. So I think this is a very good start, and I believe when these policies are being reviewed, I'm sure that impact assessment, when it comes to business and investment facilitation, I think that is a new dimension which can be added, and I'm sure that's why we are here. And we hear you very clearly that there's a need of transparent regulations, stability in the regulations, and of course we talked about like if there's a change, there should be sufficient, not just so rapid as you put it, and the communication, I'm sure, will take. I'm sure that it will be enhanced. Probably the new development is the innovation in finance. Specifically, the minister made sure one of our members in technical team rather, is a new young man, himself an investor. Mr. Jumane, if you can stand up. This colleague, part of our team, is so versed with the issues of the venture capital finance aspect of the angel investment in crowd finance, all these new financing mechanisms, which may not necessarily be too new in some of your countries, but at least in Tanzania, it's when a number of new regulations, new laws are being implemented to undertake the same. So I think the new, at least this document is coming up with that nuances, those nuances in finance, and we acknowledge the minister that he had to make sure we have people who understand these issues and live them. So the document has captured them very well, has put forward that eventually, when the process is almost complete, the document will be unveiled to all of us, because by now it's still just a work in progress, and we, as we said, we still receive ideas, those which are very new. We acknowledge we can still put them, but mostly, if you read this document, most of your ideas have been captured. Because we are lucky to have the minister himself and all the leaders in the ministry, probably if there's any other communication as far as some of this discussion, at least for them,